Amma and Efua were born and raised in Accra, Ghana, in the same house, under the same roof, yet they could not have been more different as they grew up. As little girls, they shared secrets, laughed at silly jokes, and chased each other through the narrow streets of their neighborhood. But life has a way of showing people's true paths, and soon, the sisters began to drift apart. Efua loved the finer things in life. She liked attention and wanted the world to see her shine. Expensive clothes, flashy jewelry, and the latest handbags were her way of making a statement. When she got engaged to a wealthy man who spoiled her with gifts, she wore her new status like a crown. Everyone in the family noticed how she walked into a room, as if she owned it. Amma, on the other hand, was nothing like her sister. Quiet and focused, she believed in building a future with her own two hands. Every cedi she earned from her small jobs went into paying for books and school fees. She did not care much for fancy clothes or glamorous makeup. Instead, she dreamed of finishing her studies and making her parents proud. While Efua was busy shopping at boutiques, Amma was sitting by the lamp at night, reading and taking notes. Though they were sisters, their choices made them feel like they lived in two different worlds. One chased luxury, the other chased knowledge, and soon their differences would be tested. One afternoon, Amma came home from school tired, but excited about finishing another tough exam. Sitting in the living room was Efua, dressed in a silk robe, her nails perfectly polished, and a wide smile on her face. "Amma," she said dramatically, "you must come to my engagement party. It will be the biggest event of the year." She handed Amma a shiny envelope with golden letters. Inside was an invitation to a grand celebration at one of Accra's finest five-star hotels. Amma held the card carefully, almost afraid it would stain from the dust on her fingers. She had never even stepped into such a hotel before. Efua went on and on about the guest list. Politicians, wealthy businessmen, celebrities, even a few international fashion icons. "Everyone who matters will be there," Efua bragged. "It will be the talk of the city." Amma smiled politely, but deep down her stomach tightened. She wanted to be there for her sister, but she knew she had nothing to wear that would fit in at such a place. Her clothes were simple, made for everyday life, not glamorous events where cameras flashed and people judged you by your outfit. That night, Amma sat on her bed with the invitation still in her hand. She thought about skipping the party. It would save her the embarrassment. But another thought came. Why should she hide? She was Efua's sister. She had every right to stand beside her, even if she didn't look like the rest of the crowd. When Amma told Efua she would attend, Efua raised her eyebrows with a smirk. "Well, I hope you don't embarrass me," she said, half joking, half serious. The words stung, but Amma didn't let them break her. She promised herself she would go, not to impress anyone, but because she loved her sister and wanted to support her, no matter what. As the day of the party drew closer, Amma's worry about her outfit grew stronger. She could hear her classmates whispering about the event and about Efua's rich lifestyle. Amma avoided the topic, but in her heart, she prayed she could find something, anything, that would give her the courage to walk into that hotel with her head held high. The invitation sat on her small desk, glowing under the light. To many, it was just a piece of card. But for Amma, it was a test of courage, dignity, and the strength to show up even when she didn't feel she belonged. And though she had no dress, no jewelry, and no designer shoes, she knew one thing for sure. She would not let her sister or herself down. Amma decided she was going to that party, no matter what. What she didn't know was how much that one decision would change her life forever. The week of the engagement party, Amma searched everywhere for something decent to wear. She passed by expensive shops in the city, the kind her sister Efua loved, but the price tags made her heart sink. A single dress cost more than her school fees for an entire term. She knew that world was not for her. Instead, she went to the place she always trusted, Makola Market. Makola was busy as always, full of voices calling out prices, the smell of roasted corn, and stalls overflowing with fabrics and clothes. Amma walked slowly through the rows, her eyes scanning for something simple but beautiful. She didn't want to look like she was trying too hard. She just wanted a dress that felt like her, humble but strong. After hours of searching, she found it. A stall run by an elderly woman had a dress hanging on the side, almost hidden behind piles of fabric. It was not shiny or heavily decorated. It was a soft cream color with tiny embroidered flowers along the neckline. Simple, elegant, and unique in its own way. When Amma held it up against herself, she smiled. It wasn't flashy, but it made her feel confident. The price was low, so low it shocked her. She paid the woman quickly, thanking her with a smile. The night of the party came. Amma wore the dress with her old sandals and a small pair of earrings she had owned for years. She looked at herself in the mirror and whispered, "This is enough." She wasn't pretending to be rich. She was simply showing up as herself. But when she arrived at the hotel, Efua and her friends immediately noticed. Efua was dressed in a glittering gown that cost more than some people's yearly salary. Her friends sparkled in jewels and designer brands. When Amma walked in, their laughter started quietly, then grew louder. "Look who decided to come," one of Efua's friends sneered. "Is this a wedding or a charity event?" Another chimed in, "Cheap bride. That dress looks like it was picked from a donation pile." Efua laughed the loudest, covering her mouth with perfectly manicured nails. "Amma, honestly, you could have just stayed home instead of embarrassing me with." She waved her hand up and down at Amma's outfit, as if it were an insult. Amma's face burned, but she stood tall. She didn't try to argue or explain. Deep down, she knew her dress wasn't about the price. It was about her courage to be there. She smiled faintly, even as her eyes stung with unshed tears. What none of them knew was that the cheap dress they mocked would soon change everything. The same outfit they ridiculed would become the reason people would remember Amma long after the glitter of that night faded away. The hotel ballroom was glowing with golden lights, crystal chandeliers, and music floating through the air. Waiters moved gracefully with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Everyone was dressed in gowns and tuxedos, sparkling from head to toe. When Amma walked in wearing her simple Makola dress, a few heads turned. At first, it was just curious glances, but soon the whispers began. Efua noticed the attention and saw her chance. With her fiancé by her side and her friends circling around her, she called out across the room, "Amma, over here." Her voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. Amma hesitated but walked toward her. The crowd's eyes followed. Efua looked her sister up and down, then burst into laughter. "My sister decided to wear this?" she said, gesturing dramatically at Amma's dress. "At my engagement? A 5-star hotel? You look like you're going to Sunday service in the village." Her friends laughed so hard that even some strangers nearby chuckled nervously. Amma's cheeks grew hot, but she forced herself to stay calm. She wanted to shrink, but she knew leaving would only give them more reason to laugh. Efua wasn't done. She took Amma's hand and spun her around like she was showing off a mannequin. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, "meet my little sister, the cheap bride. This is what happens when you spend all your money on books instead of beauty." The room erupted in laughter. Some people shook their heads, others whispered behind glasses of wine, and Amma could hear words like "poor thing" and "out of place." Her heart pounded. For a moment, her vision blurred with tears, but she blinked them back. She stood straight, shoulders squared, refusing to give Efua the satisfaction of seeing her break. Her fingers trembled against the fabric of her dress, but her voice, when she finally spoke, was steady. "I came here to celebrate you, Efua," Amma said quietly but firmly. "Not to compete with you." The laughter softened, and a few people looked uncomfortable. Efua rolled her eyes, but Amma didn't flinch. She stayed where she was, even though every part of her wanted to run. She found a quiet corner later, away from the spotlight, and sipped water instead of champagne. Some people still whispered, some still mocked, but others glanced at her with a kind of respect. They could see she hadn't crumbled under the weight of humiliation. Amma knew one thing for sure that night: her worth was not tied to a dress. She had walked into that room with dignity, and no amount of cruelty could take it from her. What she didn't know yet was that her calm strength, and that very dress, was about to catch the eye of someone who could change her future forever. Just when the laughter in the ballroom was beginning to fade into chatter again, the atmosphere shifted. The heavy doors at the entrance opened, and in walked a man who carried himself with quiet power. His name spread like electricity through the room: Kwame Mensah, Ghana's most famous fashion designer. The man whose runway shows in Paris and Milan drew celebrities from all over the world. The music seemed to dim, as though the band knew someone important had arrived. Guests straightened their backs, adjusted their clothes, and whispered his name with awe. Cameras began to flash. Even the waiters slowed down, trying to sneak glances at him. Kwame wasn't just another guest. He was the guest everyone wished to impress. Efua's eyes lit up the moment she saw him. This was her chance. She smoothed her glittering gown, tossed her hair back, and positioned herself right in his path. "This is it," she whispered to her friends, smiling confidently. Her gown shimmered under the lights, every bead sewn to perfection. She was certain she would shine brighter than anyone else in the room. As Kwame moved through the crowd, people rushed to greet him, but he was polite and distant, shaking hands quickly before continuing forward. His sharp eyes scanned the room, not just at the clothes but at the people wearing them. He was known for finding beauty in the unexpected, and tonight he was on the lookout for something new, something authentic. Efua stepped forward boldly, blocking his way with a dazzling smile. "Mr. Mensah," she said sweetly, "what an honor to have you here. Do you like my dress? It's custom-made from Italy." She posed slightly, tilting her head the way models do. Her friends giggled behind her, sure that she had his full attention. But Kwame only gave her a polite nod, his eyes already moving past her. He wasn't impressed by shine or price tags. He was searching for something deeper. He scanned the ballroom once more, and then his gaze landed on the corner of the room, where Amma stood quietly in her simple Makola dress. In that instant, the whole party seemed to shift. Efua was still speaking, but Kwame's eyes had locked onto Amma, who wasn't even trying to be noticed. She stood with her glass of water, her posture calm despite the humiliation she had just endured. There was something about the way the fabric of her dress fell, the little embroidered flowers, and most of all, the way she carried it with quiet strength. The whispers started again, this time different. Guests nudged one another, following Kwame's gaze. Efua's confident smile faltered as she realized he was no longer looking at her. Amma, unaware of what was happening, looked up and found the famous designer staring right at her. She froze, her heart racing. She had no idea that her cheap dress had just caught the eye of the man who could turn it into history. The ballroom grew quieter as Kwame Mensah changed direction and walked straight toward the corner where Amma stood. Every step he took seemed to echo across the marble floor. People turned their heads, holding their breath, wondering who had caught his attention. Amma felt her chest tighten. She glanced behind her, thinking maybe he was looking for someone else. But his eyes stayed fixed on her. When he finally stopped in front of her, Amma nearly dropped her glass. He smiled warmly, tilting his head slightly as he looked at her dress from top to bottom. "Young lady," he said, his deep voice carrying easily through the room. "Where did you get this dress?" The question stunned Amma. For a moment, she could only blink. Then, nervously, she cleared her throat. "It's from a small tailor in Makola Market," she said softly. Her words felt almost embarrassing in such a grand place, surrounded by gowns that cost fortunes. She waited for him to laugh or dismiss it. But instead, Kwame's eyes lit up. He turned to the crowd, his voice suddenly louder, filled with excitement. "This," he declared, pointing at Amma's simple dress, "is art. A masterpiece." The room gasped. Glasses froze midair. Conversation stopped. Reporters near the back rushed forward, their cameras already flashing. Guests craned their necks to see the girl in the plain cream dress who had just been called the highlight of the evening. Amma's heart pounded. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Efua, standing a few feet away, turned pale. Her jaw dropped, and her hands clenched into fists at her sides. The gown she had bragged about, the one she thought would steal the spotlight, was suddenly invisible. Kwame walked around Amma slowly, studying every detail of the embroidery, the cut, the way the fabric flowed. "This design," he said almost to himself, "is pure genius. It tells a story. Simple, elegant, powerful." He turned back to Amma, his eyes kind but serious. "Whoever made this has a gift." Amma swallowed hard, her voice shaking. "It was just a local tailor. An older woman. She makes dresses at her small stall." Kwame's face broke into a wide smile. "Then I must meet her," he said firmly. "The world needs to see talent like this." The crowd erupted in murmurs. Some guests clapped, others whispered in disbelief. A few even looked guilty, remembering how they had laughed at Amma earlier. Efua's friends, who had mocked the cheap dress, now stared at it with wide eyes, suddenly wishing they had worn something like it. Amma stood frozen, not knowing whether to cry, laugh, or hide. She had come to the party feeling out of place, ready to endure humiliation for the sake of her sister. Now the most powerful man in fashion was calling her dress a masterpiece. In that moment, Amma realized something she would never forget. True beauty doesn't scream, it speaks quietly, and the right eyes will always see it. Efua's laughter froze on her lips. Her perfectly painted face went pale as she watched Kwame Mensah circle around Amma, studying the dress as if it were the most precious thing he had ever seen. The crowd followed his gaze, and whispers filled the room, excited, impressed, amazed. Suddenly, all eyes were no longer on her glittering gown or her designer jewelry. They were on Amma, standing quietly in her simple Makola dress, looking both nervous and proud. Her friends, who had moments ago been giggling and teasing Amma, now turned toward her in disbelief. One by one, they drifted away from Efua, drawn to Amma by Kwame's attention and by the awe spreading through the room. Efua tried to call their names, laugh it off, make a joke to regain control, but the words stuck in her throat. The group she had thought would amplify her brilliance had abandoned her entirely. Efua looked around, panicked, realizing she was suddenly invisible. All the whispers, the pointing, the excitement, it wasn't about her anymore. The mockery she had spent months crafting had completely backfired. She opened her mouth, but no witty comment came. The confidence she had carried like armor all evening seemed to evaporate in an instant. Kwame turned to Amma and spoke enthusiastically, asking her more questions about the dress, the tailor, and the inspiration behind it. Reporters began snapping photos, capturing every angle. Camera flashes reflected off the chandeliers, and everyone wanted to see the girl in the cheap dress that had become the centerpiece of the evening. Efua's mind raced. She had imagined this party as a stage for her, a night when everyone would admire her elegance and wealth. Instead, she was just background scenery, standing beside a sister she had mocked relentlessly. For the first time, she felt the sharp sting of envy. Every compliment Amma received, every smile, every curious glance, it was like a dagger twisting in Efua's chest. Her friends, who had once whispered cruel jokes, now whispered awestruck questions. Where did she get that dress? Is this real? How did Kwame even notice her? Each word was a reminder to Efua of her failure to shine in the spotlight she had so desperately claimed. Efua wanted to storm over, reclaim her moment, but she couldn't. The more she tried to regain attention, the more it slipped through her fingers. The laughter she had once commanded had turned against her, replaced with silence and astonishment directed at Amma. Standing there, Efua finally understood what she had ignored all her life. Wealth and showy dresses could impress for a moment, but true talent and authenticity could steal the room in ways money never could. And tonight, that truth was painfully, undeniably clear. Her sister, humble and unnoticed until now, had become the center of the universe, leaving Efua to watch in stunned silence. After the initial shock of the party, Amma was still trying to catch her breath when Kwame Mensah approached her again, this time with a wide smile. "Amma," he said, "your dress has something special, something the world needs to see. I want you and your tailor to work with me on my next runway show in Johannesburg." Amma's eyes widened. She stared at him, unable to speak at first. Her mind raced. Runway shows? Johannesburg? International attention. This was a world she had never even dreamed of. She looked over at the elderly woman who had made the dress, the small, quiet tailor from Makola Market. The woman's eyes were shining with pride, and her hands trembled slightly as she clutched the fabric she had spent hours creating. Kwame continued, speaking to the crowd that had gathered around them. "This isn't just a dress. It's a story. It's humility, talent, and creativity all woven into one. And these are the kind of voices my show needs." Cameras flashed as reporters pushed closer, scribbling notes and snapping pictures of Amma, the tailor, and Kwame. The room buzzed with excitement. Everyone wanted to know the story behind the cheap dress that had become the centerpiece of the evening. Amma felt a strange mixture of disbelief and joy. Just hours ago, she had walked into this party feeling small, embarrassed, and out of place. Now she was being celebrated, recognized, and given an opportunity bigger than anything she could have imagined. She realized, with a quiet smile, that humility, hard work, and staying true to herself had opened doors that luxury and wealth never could. The tailor, who had once worked in the backstreets of Makola, now found herself at the center of a global opportunity. Kwame explained plans for the collaboration, discussing fabrics, designs, and the creative process, while Amma listened carefully, absorbing every word. She knew she had a responsibility, not just to herself, but to the woman who had believed in her skills long before anyone else. The photographers continued to capture every moment, broadcasting it on social media and news outlets. Messages of praise, awe, and admiration flooded in. People were amazed that such talent could come from the market stalls of Accra. The contrast between humble beginnings and international recognition made the story even more powerful. As Amma looked around at the chaos, flashing cameras, reporters, excited whispers, she felt a deep sense of gratitude. She thought about Efua, the expensive dresses, and the nights spent worrying about fitting in. None of that could compare to this moment, when her courage, her simplicity, and her honesty had created something unforgettable. That night, Amma understood something important. True success is not measured by how much you can spend, but by how true you stay to yourself. And for her, that truth had turned a small Makola dress into a triumph that would be remembered far beyond the walls of that ballroom. When Amma returned home from the party, the news had already spread like wildfire. Relatives who had once praised Efua for her expensive tastes and glamorous lifestyle now crowded around Amma, clapping her on the back, asking her to tell every detail about the night. Her small Makola dress, once ridiculed, had become legendary in the family circle. Cameras had captured Kwame's praise, and the story of the humble girl who had stunned Ghana's top designer traveled fast. Amma's parents were especially proud. They hugged her tightly, their eyes shining. "We always knew you had something special," her mother said softly. "And now everyone else can see it too." Amma smiled, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with fancy clothes or parties. This was real recognition, the kind that mattered. Efua, on the other hand, felt the sting of being left behind. She tried to defend herself, talking quickly about her gown, her designer shoes, and the status she had worked so hard to build. "I was just trying to make the night special," she said, her voice edged with frustration. "Amma, you can't expect to compete with a proper engagement look." But her words fell flat. The relatives shook their heads or ignored her, still asking Amma questions, wanting to hear her story. Even cousins who had once whispered behind Amma's back now followed her every word, clearly captivated by her humility and courage. Every compliment that came Amma's way was a silent reminder to Efua of how the evening had gone. The mockery she had poured on her sister had completely backfired. Efua's friends who had attended the party also called, trying to explain themselves, claiming they had only been joking or that Amma had luck on her side. But luck had nothing to do with it, and even they knew it. Amma's grace under humiliation and her honesty had revealed something far more powerful than money or fancy gowns. Even extended family members who had once been dazzled by Efua's wealth now saw her in a different light. They noticed the sharpness in her words, the pride that bordered on arrogance, and the way she had tried to tear her sister down. Efua had always relied on appearances, but now appearances had no power against talent and humility. Amma, for her part, accepted the praise quietly. She didn't boast or flaunt her new attention. She shared the story of her tailor, of Makola Market, of the hours of work and love that had gone into creating her dress. Her modesty made everyone admire her even more. That evening, Efua sat alone in her room, scrolling through messages and social media posts, realizing that her cruelty had exposed her true colors. The family that had once celebrated her now celebrated Amma. And for the first time, she understood that the world favored authenticity and kindness over glitter and showmanship. It was a hard lesson, and one she could not take back. Amma, meanwhile, felt a quiet satisfaction. She hadn't needed to fight for attention or flaunt wealth to win respect. Her humility, patience, and courage had done it for her, and in the end, those were the qualities that truly mattered. Months passed, and Amma found herself standing backstage in Johannesburg, the city buzzing around her. The simple cream dress she had bought from Makola Market had been transformed by Kwame Mensah into a stunning piece for the runway, flowing fabric, delicate embroidery, and a design that kept the dress's humble charm while giving it a new, breathtaking elegance. Her heart pounded with excitement and nerves. When the lights dimmed and the music swelled, Amma stepped onto the runway. Cameras flashed, and the audience leaned forward in anticipation. Every step she took made the dress move like liquid, catching the lights and the gasps of everyone watching. The murmurs of amazement grew into applause, cheers, and whistles. She felt powerful, proud, and completely herself. In the front row, Amma saw faces she knew. Reporters, fashion critics, and even a few international designers clapped enthusiastically. Then she spotted Efua, sitting silently, her mouth slightly open, unable to hide her shock. The same sister who had mocked her dress months ago was now witnessing its triumph on a global stage. Amma's humility and courage had turned a simple dress into history. As Amma reached the end of the runway and paused, she smiled softly, waving to the crowd. Flashbulbs popped, capturing the moment for the world to see. The applause felt endless, and in that instant, she understood something deeply. True recognition comes not from wealth or showiness, but from authenticity, talent, and staying true to yourself. Amma walked off the runway, her chest swelling with pride. She had started with a humble dress and a quiet heart, and now she was celebrated by the world. Efua, sitting in silence, realized she had been wrong to mock her sister. But it was too late. The story belonged to Amma now, and the cheap dress had become a masterpiece that no one would ever forget.